I never really thought my life would change because of a simple summer class. At 22, fresh out of college with a degree I wasn't sure I even wanted, I was stuck in that strange limbo where everyone expects you to figure out your future. Instead, I signed up for a night literature class at the local community center not because I wanted to learn, but because I wanted a distraction. That's when I met her. Her name was Ms. Bennett. At least, that's what the schedule said. She walked into the classroom like she owned the air we were breathing. She wasn't the kind of teacher you ignore. Tall, confident, perfectly tailored black blazer hugging her frame just enough to make me forget why I was even there. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands falling around her face in a way that looked both professional and teasing at the same time. "Good evening, class," she said, her voice low and smooth, like she'd been teaching for years and knew exactly how to control a room. There were about 12 of us in the room. Mostly older adults, a couple of young women who looked like they were here for the extra credit. And then me sitting in the back, already regretting my life choices, until she looked directly at me. "You," she said. I blinked. "Me?" "Yes. Back row. You look awake enough to start. Why don't you tell us your name and why you're here?" Great. Day one and I was already being singled out. "My name's Alex," I said. "And, honestly, I'm just here because I had some free time." A couple of the others laughed quietly. She didn't. "Interesting," she said, narrowing her eyes slightly. "We'll see if you still feel that way by the end of the term." There was something about the way she said it, not exactly a threat, but not entirely innocent either. Like she already knew something about me that I didn't. The first half of the class was all introductions and syllabus talk. Boring stuff. But when she actually started teaching, the entire room shifted. She moved when she talked, not pacing nervously, but with intention, like each step had a purpose. When she leaned against the desk, her arms crossed, her eyes scanning the class, it felt like she could see through every excuse, every fake answer. "Literature," she said, "is not just about words. It's about control. The author controls what you feel, when you feel it, and how much. Good writing is manipulation. And I hope you're all ready to be manipulated." There was a faint smile when she said that last line, and it hit me like a challenge. When class ended, most people left quickly. I stayed behind, pretending to put my notebook away slowly. "Alex, right," she said, glancing at me as she wiped the whiteboard. "Yeah. You seem restless." I shrugged. "I guess. Just not sure this is my thing yet." She turned fully toward me, her arms crossed again. "Good. That means there's something to work with. I like students who resist at first, they end up surprising themselves." I didn't know what to say to that. The way she looked at me felt like more than just a teacher sizing up a student. Before I could answer, another voice came from the hallway. "Hey, Nora, you ready?" A woman stepped inside the classroom, younger, maybe late 20s, with short auburn hair and an easy smile. "This is Claire," Ms. Bennett said. "She teaches philosophy down the hall." Claire gave me a quick look, then a grin. "New student?" "Apparently," Ms. Bennett said. "One we'll have to keep an eye on." I wasn't sure if I liked the sound of that or if I liked it a little too much. Walking home that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the way she had looked at me. There was nothing inappropriate about it, but it wasn't neutral either. It felt like she was inviting me into something, some game I didn't fully understand yet. The next class couldn't come fast enough. When I showed up 2 nights later, Ms. Bennett was already there, sitting casually on the edge of the desk with a coffee in her hand. "You're early," she said. "Yeah, figured I'd try taking this seriously." "Good," she said, giving me a small approving nod. "Sit up front tonight. I want to see if you actually engage when I can keep my eye on you." I smirked. "Feels like I'm in trouble already." "You might be," she said, with just the faintest hint of a smile. The lesson that night was about power dynamics in literature, how characters take control of situations, how tension builds when control shifts. At one point, she asked me to read a passage aloud. My voice cracked a little at first, nerves, maybe, but I kept going. "Better," she said when I finished. "But slower. Make them feel the pause." It was strange, but I obeyed. And when I did, the entire room got quiet. "See," she said, her eyes locked on mine. "Control. You just had all of us waiting for the next word. That's what a good writer does." It was a simple exercise. But the way she guided me through it, calm, precise, always in control, made my chest feel tight. When class ended, Claire showed up again, leaning against the door frame. "You two done manipulating the poor students yet?" she asked playfully. "Not even close," Ms. Bennett said. Claire turned to me. "You sticking around?" "I don't know," I said. "Should I?" Ms. Bennett gave me that same unreadable look. "If you do, you'll learn more than just literature." And just like that, I was hooked. The following week, I showed up early again. Maybe too early. The hallway lights were still half off, the building almost empty. When I walked into the classroom, Ms. Bennett was already there, sitting on top of the teacher's desk with a book in her lap. "You're early," she said again, tilting her head. "Maybe I'm trying to make a good impression," I said. She smiled slightly, closing the book. "Or maybe you just like the attention." I didn't answer that one. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the front row. That night, we were discussing a story where the protagonist slowly gives up control to someone else. Ms. Bennett had this way of breaking the text apart like it was a puzzle only she could solve. "Notice," she said, "that he chooses to give in. That's what makes it powerful. Control isn't always taken by force, sometimes it's offered." Her eyes found mine again. "Sometimes willingly." I could feel my face get warm, but I didn't look away. She smirked, just a little, as if she noticed. When class ended, most people rushed out as usual, but I stayed behind. Again. "You're starting to make this a habit," she said. "Maybe I just have a lot of questions." "About the reading?" "About control." That made her pause. She set her bag back down on the desk and crossed her arms. "Control is about boundaries," she said. "Knowing where the line is and deciding when to cross it." She stepped closer, just a little, enough that I could smell her perfume, sharp and subtle at the same time. "You think you like crossing lines, Alex?" "I think I want to know where they are first," I said. That earned me a rare, full smile. "Good answer," she said softly. The next week, Claire joined the class early, taking a seat near the front. She wasn't officially a student, just visiting, apparently, but Ms. Bennett didn't seem to mind. Claire had a different energy. Playful, easygoing, teasing in a way that made the room feel less formal. "So this is your star student?" she asked, glancing at me with a grin. Ms. Bennett shot her a look. "He's learning. Slowly. I like slow learners," Claire said. Gives you more time to experiment. I wasn't sure if she was serious or just messing with me, but either way, my pulse quickened. That night's lesson turned into a debate, me arguing with Claire about the meaning of a passage, Ms. Bennett stepping in to push both of us deeper into the text. It felt less like a class and more like a game, and somehow, I was losing and enjoying it at the same time. At one point, Claire leaned over and whispered, "You know she's testing you, right?" She? I asked quietly. Both of us, Claire said with a smirk. After class, I ended up walking out with the two of them. Come with us, Claire said casually as we reached the parking lot. Where? Coffee. You ask too many questions to go straight home. I hesitated, but Ms. Bennett was already unlocking her car. You coming or not? She asked. And just like that, I found myself sitting in a quiet corner booth of a late-night cafe with two women who seemed like they'd stepped out of a very different world than mine. Claire was the talker. She asked me about my job, my plans, why I even took the class. Ms. Bennett mostly listened, occasionally cutting in with a precise question that made me think harder than I wanted to at 11 at night. You don't know what you want yet, Ms. Bennett said finally, setting down her tea. Yeah, I admitted. That's fine. But indecision is still a choice. And if you keep floating, someone else will make choices for you. Her tone was calm, but it felt like a warning. Claire leaned back, smiling. Or maybe that's exactly what he needs. When we left the cafe, Claire gave me a quick wink before heading to her car. See you next week, Alex. Ms. Bennett lingered for a moment. You did better tonight, she said. You pushed back. That's good. But you still hesitate. I'm working on it. Good. Work faster. And then she turned, leaving me standing there with my heart racing like I'd just been given an assignment much bigger than a simple class reading. That night, I didn't sleep much. My mind kept replaying their words, their looks, the subtle tension between them, and the way I seemed to be caught right in the middle. It felt like this was no longer just about literature. It felt like something else was starting. The next class felt different from the start. Maybe it was me, maybe I was already expecting something to happen, but the air felt charged the moment I walked into the room. Ms. Bennett was already there, sleeves rolled up, hair pinned tighter than usual. She looked less like a professor and more like someone preparing for a confrontation. You're late, she said. I wasn't. Not really. But I didn't argue. Sit, she said simply. That night's lesson wasn't about the book we'd been reading. Instead, she wrote one word on the whiteboard in big, clean strokes. Boundaries. Tonight, she said, we're going to talk about limits. How far a character can go before they break or before they become something new entirely. She walked slowly across the room as she talked, never looking at her notes, her voice calm and precise. In stories, she continued, the most interesting moments are when someone is forced to cross a line they swore they never would. Because that's when we see who they really are. Her gaze landed on me. Alex. Give me an example. I swallowed. Macbeth. Go on. He wasn't going to kill Duncan at first. But then he did. And after that, everything changed. She nodded. Exactly. Once you cross one line, the others become easier. That's true for characters, and for people. Her words lingered in the room like smoke. After class, I started packing up my stuff when I heard her voice again. Stay, she said. It wasn't a request. When the last student left, she closed the door and leaned against it, arms crossed. "You're distracted," she said. "Maybe. You're asking the right questions in class, but you're not answering them for yourself. You want to know where the lines are." "Yes." She walked toward me slowly, deliberately, until she was close enough that I could see the small silver pendant hanging just below her collarbone. "Then you start by drawing one. Tell me a line you won't cross." I hesitated. "I don't know." "That's a problem," she said softly. "If you don't know, someone else decides for you." Her tone wasn't scolding, it was almost gentle, but it sent a shiver down my spine. The sound of a knock broke the moment. Claire poked her head inside. "Am I interrupting?" "Always," Ms. Bennett said, stepping back. Claire grinned. "Good. I like interrupting." She glanced at me. "You look like you've just been given homework." "Something like that," I said. Claire raised an eyebrow. "Need help with it?" Ms. Bennett sighed, but there was the faintest trace of a smile. "He might." That night, they invited me to join them for drinks instead of coffee. We ended up in a quiet bar with low lights and soft music, the kind of place where conversations turn more personal than you expect. Claire was in full teasing mode, leaning in closer than necessary, asking questions that felt more like dares than casual curiosity. "So," she said, stirring her drink with a straw, "what's one thing you've never told anyone?" I hesitated. "That's a big question." "Exactly," she said, smirking. "Big questions get real answers." I thought about it for a moment, then finally said, "I guess I've always wanted someone to push me. To see how far I'd actually go." There was a pause at the table. Ms. Bennett didn't smile, but her eyes softened like she'd been waiting for me to say it. Claire grinned. "Oh, he's going to be fun." When we left the bar, Claire walked with me to my car while Ms. Bennett took a call. "You know she's not doing this for every student, right?" Claire said. "I figured," I said quietly. "She's careful about who she lets in." "Lets into what?" Claire smirked, stepping closer. "You'll see." Before I could respond, Ms. Bennett appeared behind her. "Let him breathe, Claire," she said. "I was just making conversation." "I know." They exchanged a look I couldn't quite read, then Ms. Bennett turned to me. "Next week, stay after class again," she said. It didn't sound like an invitation. It sounded like an order. That week dragged. I kept replaying their words, their looks, the way Claire had leaned in just a little too close. By the time the next class came around, my nerves were already shot. When everyone left, I stayed behind, heart pounding. "Good," Ms. Bennett said when the room was empty. "You showed up." She gestured to the chair closest to her desk. "Sit." I did. "Tonight," she said, "you're not here as a student. You're here to listen." "To what?" "To yourself," she said simply. She pulled a small notebook from her bag and handed it to me. "Write down 5 things you've never said out loud. I don't care what they are: fears, desires, regrets. Just write. No censoring." I hesitated, but she just waited, calm and patient. So I wrote. Slowly at first, then faster. When I finished, I looked up. "Good," she said, taking the notebook. "Wait, you're going to read them?" "Of course," she said. "That's the point." My pulse spiked as she flipped through the pages, her expression unreadable. When she finally closed it, she looked at me with something that felt halfway between approval and amusement. "Interesting," she said. Before I could ask what she meant, the door opened. Claire stepped in, smiling like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. "Perfect timing," Ms. Bennett said. "He's ready." "Ready for what?" I asked. Claire grinned wider. "For lesson 2. When Claire said lesson 2, I expected more writing assignments. I didn't expect the door to click shut behind her, or the way Ms. Bennett looked at me like I'd just stepped onto a stage. "Stand up," Ms. Bennett said. I did. "Lesson 2, she continued, is about trust. You've already admitted you like being pushed. Now we find out how far." Claire leaned casually against the desk, watching like she was enjoying a private show. "Don't look at her," Ms. Bennett said softly. "Eyes on me." I swallowed hard and nodded. "First question," she said, stepping closer. "Who do you think is in charge here, me or you?" "You," I said immediately. She tilted her head. "Too easy. Let's try again. Who should be in charge?" That one took longer. "I guess, you." "Better," she said with a faint smile. "You're learning." She turned to Claire. "What do you think?" Claire grinned. "I think he likes pretending he doesn't already know the answer." That made Ms. Bennett laugh quietly, a rare, low sound that made my stomach tighten. The rest of the lesson wasn't really about literature at all. Instead, she asked questions, personal ones. Things I wasn't sure I wanted to say out loud. Claire would occasionally interrupt, throwing in her own questions, sometimes playful, sometimes cutting a little deeper. "What scares you more?" Claire asked at one point, "losing control or never having it in the first place?" I hesitated. "Never having it?" Claire smiled knowingly. "Good answer." Ms. Bennett nodded in agreement. Now we're getting somewhere. By the end of the night, I felt wrung out, like I'd run a marathon without leaving my chair. "Go home," Ms. Bennett said as she gathered her things. "Think about tonight. Next time, you're going to choose what happens." "Choose what?" I asked. She gave me that unreadable look again. "You'll know when it's time." Claire smirked. "Don't overthink it. Just be ready." The following days were torture. Every free moment, I replayed that night, their questions, their voices, the way Ms. Bennett never looked away when she spoke. By the time the next class came around, I was a mess of nerves and anticipation. When the classroom emptied, I didn't wait for her to ask me to stay, I just stayed. She noticed. "Good," she said. "You're learning to anticipate." Claire walked in right after, holding 2 coffees. "Ready?" she asked. "I think so," I said. "That's not good enough," Ms. Bennett said, taking one of the coffees. "Be certain." "I'm ready," I said firmly. "Better," she said, almost smiling. This time, there was no notebook, no writing. Instead, Ms. Bennett walked over to the board and wrote 2 words. "Obey. Resist. Choose one," she said. I hesitated, my pulse hammering. "Choose," she repeated, sharper this time. "Obey," I said finally. Claire grinned. "Knew it?" Ms. Bennett turned back to me. "Then tonight, you follow instructions. No hesitation." What followed wasn't dangerous, wasn't anything that would get anyone in trouble, but it felt like something far bigger than a class exercise. They asked me to stand, sit, move to different spots in the room, read short passages aloud with different emotions. Claire circled me like a cat, throwing in random challenges, slower, louder. Look at me when you say that line. It was exhausting and strangely exhilarating at the same time, like they were training me for something I didn't fully understand yet. When it was finally over, Ms. Bennett stepped closer, her voice low. "Good," she said. "You followed through." Claire leaned in on the other side of me, smiling. "Next time, maybe we'll see what happens when you don't." Walking out that night, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just about learning anymore. This wasn't even just about them. It was about me, about finding out what I actually wanted, and how far I was willing to go to get it. And for the first time, I couldn't wait for the next lesson. When I walked into the classroom that night, I already knew this would be different. There was something about the way Ms. Bennett stood by the desk, arms folded, watching me silently. Claire was already there too, perched on one of the desks like she owned the room. Finally, she said with a grin, "Thought you might chicken out." "I'm here," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Good," Ms. Bennett said. "Then tonight, you lead." That caught me off guard. Lead? What? The lesson. The choice. Everything. She gestured to the board where the words from last week were still faintly visible: obey and resist. "Last time you obeyed," she said. "Tonight you decide for yourself. No instructions." Claire leaned forward, smirking. "This should be fun." For a moment, I didn't move. Then I walked to the board and picked up the marker. Instead of circling one of the words, I crossed them both out and wrote a third. Choose. When I turned back to them, Claire was grinning, and Ms. Bennett for once actually looked surprised. "Interesting," she said. "Explain." "I don't want to just obey or resist," I said. "I want to make my own call." Claire clapped softly. Finally. From there, everything shifted. I asked them questions. I challenged their answers. When Claire tried to tease me, I didn't flinch. When Ms. Bennett pushed me, I pushed back calmly, deliberately. At first, they just watched, maybe testing me. But slowly, I saw their expressions change. Ms. Bennett's controlled mask cracked into a faint smile, and Claire leaned forward, her eyes bright with excitement. "You're different tonight," Claire said softly. "Good," I said. "So are you." Eventually, I told them exactly what I wanted, not in detail, not in a way that crossed any lines, but clearly enough that they both understood. "I want to stop being the experiment," I said. "I want to be part of it." There was a long silence. Then Ms. Bennett stepped closer, just enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence. "Then you're not my student anymore," she said quietly. Claire smiled, softer this time. "Guess that makes us equals now." The rest of the night blurred together, not in a physical way, but in the way moments blur when they feel too intense to hold onto. We talked. We argued. We laughed, real laughter, not just the sharp, testing kind. For the first time, it didn't feel like a game. It felt like something real. When it was finally time to leave, Ms. Bennett walked me to the door. "You did well," she said. "Better than I expected." "Better than you hoped?" I asked. That earned me a small, almost reluctant smile. "Maybe." Claire appeared beside her, hands in her pockets. "So what now?" I asked. "That's up to you," Ms. Bennett said. Lesson 3 is whatever you decide it is. Claire grinned. No pressure. I left the building with my head spinning, but for the first time since this whole thing started, I wasn't just following along. I was choosing. And I knew this wasn't the end of the story. Not for me. Not for any of us. The end for now.